Yeah, I'm 30.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting up there,
We
but
all do. Once that 30 mark hits, it's like, "Meow."
quite depressing.
It's not depressing. Come on. 40 is like the new 20, right?
Sure.
Looks like it.
Okay. So let's get started. So I'm lead this week. So the first thing that we need to do is go a little bit of a synopsis of the case. So Aaron Kennedy, he's the CEO of Noodles and Company, and he seeks to grow the company from within while balancing the pressures of other competitors trying to push their way into the fast casual foods category. As they grow, they face a difficult decision on how to meet the pace of the budding company while maintaining their culture. So, what I want us to discuss is what is the fast casual segment, which basically is like restaurants that offer high quality and creative foods sold at moderate price points with counter rather than table service segment, and then what is the challenge facing Noodles and Company within the segment. So basically, I'm thinking they're talking about like the Panera Bread, the Chipotle competitors, and that type of fast food, and then like what challenges does the company face within this segment?
Well, I think the first thing they face is just a lot of competition. There's a flood of these fast casual restaurants that are just taking over the market. So I think just the sheer volume of competition kind of eats away at potential customers.
I agree.
No, I mean it is now. I mean we can see it right now. I mean I can go over to the local, you know, like over by where the like a huge shopping center, you know, there's like you have like movie theaters and you have all these restaurant chains and stuff around. I mean there's you know, you have like some actual sit down restaurants like an Applebee's or any one of those, but then like this segment is just those ones that have kind of like popped up. And I know we're supposed to kind of evaluate the case by from its time, and I was just double checking, and I'm like, it's 2003 when this was happening, and I mean, I mean, Chipotle was there, but it was like just kind of like getting its foot in the door. You had a few companies or few businesses that were doing this, but it was still relatively new, I think. This whole you walk in, you order your food, go sit down at a table, and they'll bring the food out to you kind of a place. You know, it's not going to be the McDonald's. It's not going to be just the super fast food that you just get your stuff and go. I mean, it's actually like a restaurant where you sit down. I mean, sometimes they'll bring you drinks or whatever, but you know, the whole I don't need to tip anybody kind of a thing where like you have not necessarily waitresses or servers, um, but just, you know, just one of the employees like, okay, here's your number. There's a couple of them like just down the street from here that just kind of blown up, you know, but at the time, you know, it was still pretty novel, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
think back at 2003.
I think
Right.
because of that, because of the like in between status, it meant like location was maybe even more of a priority for these fast casual, or
Yeah.
at least the types of locations that would suit their business model were perhaps less available. So as soon as that boom started, they really got in this position where there was the risk of like going hard to acquire more units and expand, but at the potential cost of getting into really bad leases that might make it hard to turn a profit with your current compensation model and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those companies had a lot of years to get established. So those front runners that were the beginning, now they're so established and so well recognized that even though Noodles and Company has grown so much, they don't have the same brand recognition as like Panera Bread or Chipotle, where everybody knows who they are and what they're all about.
Yeah.
So I think that that's another challenge that they face.
Uh, I kind of got the impression they were one of the front runners,
They
weren't they?
were. I think so.
Yeah.
But not they were obviously they weren't the first on the scene.
Yeah.
Who are you talking about?
Noodles
The,
and Company.
Noodles and Company.
Yeah. Okay, so in going over the analysis, one of the questions that I thought would be good for us to discuss is, can Noodles and Company maintain their corporate culture through aggressive growth? Why and why not?
I said no. That's actually something I was talking about. I said no. I mean, most of us are here in the West Coast. You know, I'm not sure if you guys have it where you guys are out, but In-N-Out was an example that I
Oh,
used.
yeah, me too.
It's like you have a family-run fast food joint, you know, but I mean, everybody wants them. It's not like, I mean, I know a lot of people compare them to like Five Guys or Five Guys burgers and fries or whatever. Uh, from over on the East Coast, and they've like branched out everywhere. But the In-N-Out is a family run. They don't. It's not a franchise. You have to be a family member to actually open one, kind of a thing. And they won't freeze any of the food or any of the burgers, and so it's like they've got to figure out how like the distribution goes, you know. And there's lines out the door every single time. I mean, it doesn't no matter which one you go to. It's like there's a line in the drive-through and there's a line out the door. I mean, not out the door, but it's like there's always going to be a wait. You know, it's always busy, and I guarantee you they're turning like profit hand over fist. And so, but they have this culture where it's like fresh food. We're not going to freeze anything, but I mean, they're really committed to their culture. So I think if they're going to aggressively expand, I don't think they're going to be able to keep keep the culture as well. You know, they'd probably lose a little bit.
I was thinking the same thing, but then you bringing up In-N-Out, and then I was just thinking about going to this. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's the sandwich place that me and my wife went to in Utah, and they finally brought it down to Arizona, and we were really excited. But I've been really impressed with both those examples of where you go in there and the culture that they talk about on their material. They've really done a good job of hiring for that kind of culture. So I was more of the opinion that growth would hurt your culture, but I'm just thinking of a couple examples where they seem to do a pretty seamless job of getting new people to come in and be bright, happy, and really customer service oriented. And it's probably, you know, like me going to an In-N-Out here in Arizona compared to if I went to one there in California, you would probably know the difference. But if I'm hearing about In-N-Out, I've never been to the one in California, and then one opens up, I'm impressed by the service. They seem to be doing a good job of at least imitating whatever qualities of service the California locations are trying to communicate.
My thoughts on it was that it might take a hit, you know, because when you go to one of those small town places, a lot of it is just kind of perception. You perceive, oh, it's a small hometown place, you know, and so if something's more nationwide, just even if the culture is the same or the people or the employees act the same, just your perception of it is different. You know, like, oh, somebody on the East Coast is eating the same thing, or, you know, whatever case might be. So I think the culture can be made. I think it's going to take a hit. I think it's going to take a hit just because you're branching out and you're becoming mainstream. But I think a lot of the culture can be preserved by just intensive training. You know, when employees come in, you train them. This is how you look. This is how you talk. This is the kind of music that's going to be played in here. And so you just really teach them like what the culture is going to be. And I think some extensive training can make can preserve some of that culture. Although some will be lost just by perception, I think a lot of it can be maintained just with frequent and intense training of employees.
Mm-hmm. Those are really good answers. I kind of agree with everything you guys said. I know that for my paper with the In-N-Out thing, I basically put like, yes, you don't grow as much and you don't have as many restaurants, but everybody here in Las Vegas will be happy to drive 20 minutes to get to the In-N-Out in order to eat it, rather than go to the Mickey D's down the street, Burger King, even Five Guys, because of that culture. And so whenever you aggressively expand too much, I think that you can grow, like you said with the sandwich shop, but then at the same time, we don't know if that growth to Arizona was calculated and it was 5% because that's the only place that they grew it to, or if it was something like huge, because then you'd have to analyze exactly where that growth is. But from what I was reading, like he wanted something really, really aggressive because he wanted people to just know more about the company and recognize the brand. And I think that I feel like it's unnecessary, especially if you grow too quickly. But then here they wanted to talk a little bit about like the early results, they're building momentum, their whole philosophy of like every guest, every bowl, every time. So what was the result of their early openings? And then like, why do we think that that's what happened? So we're talking about like the poor processes, substandard food, disconnect with customer, like how they didn't really take off in the very beginning.
Well, I just thought it was interesting that here you have a guy who's, I don't know if he's ever opened up a restaurant before or worked in there. I mean, he starts talking to a chef and they're like, yeah, I can kind of think, I see where you're going with this, and okay, let's do it. But I don't know, there's one thing, you always got to be consistent in a restaurant industry. I mean, especially, I mean, I kind of know a little bit about that industry. I've actually graduated from culinary school, and so it's like the reason people come back is because it tastes the same every single time,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And if you screw that up, nobody's going to come back to you, because it's like, okay, what am I going to get today? You know, am I going to get the good stuff? Am I going to get the not so good stuff, you know? And so I think that was some of the things that they were kind of running into, you know? I mean, they were trying to, you know, just get the right mix and the right menu, I think. And they kind of, they definitely had some speed bumps on that.
And Brian, it's my perception that a lot of restaurants really struggle off the, I mean, is that not the case? Do some restaurants, or is it pretty common for a restaurant to have a rough couple of years?
It is extremely common. What I understand, and this is something, because I mean, one of the reasons why I'm actually taking business classes, because I want to open my own restaurant, is 90% of restaurants fail within the first year.
I know.
I actually helped open one, and it didn't make it past the first year. Granted, there was like blatant managerial, like just fraud. You know, half of us didn't know we were not paying taxes and a few things like that. We were like, the guy was just pocketing the money, and so that kind of played into it. But on average, about 90% fail within the first year. Out of the 10% that make it, 90% of those will fail within the next 5 years, or they just won't be in business, you know? So it's like, don't know the math exactly on that. But I mean,
think
it's like
really cutthroat.
Yeah, for the ones that last a good few years and stuff. And it's, you know, it's pretty bad, but I mean, a lot of people just don't have, I mean, here you have a guy who kind of knows what he's doing as far as business wise. I mean, he's doing the right things, and you're going to be hitting those speed bumps, but I'm trying to remember exactly what he was, how he started out, but I mean,
well, the one thing I was going to ask is, do a lot of these restaurants have a lot of investment capital? Like he went and got all the resources ahead of time from independent investors. He didn't just
a lot of people don't.
Are undercapitalized for sure.
Yeah, they're definitely undercapitalized. They can't, I mean, they're trying to make it, I mean, a lot of these are going to be like mom and pop places where they're just going to go out and get a loan. I mean, here you have this guy who's just like, he's got just investors, angel investors, or just friends who've actually got the straight up cash to go, yeah, here's $250,000, you know?
Yeah, so restaurants like that probably have a lower,
and those are probably the ones that are going to be making it. I mean, if you have any sort of a hiccup and you're just like a mom and pop place, or you're just trying to open up a restaurant and you're relying on the bank the whole time, they're just going to look at you going, this is just a bad loan. You know, how am I going to get my money back? You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I think that also a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to cook really good and I make really great food and that's going to do it. And
Yeah.
that's not it at all. There's so much more to it. And when you've never even worked in a restaurant, a lot of people open restaurants without ever having owned one. So they don't understand so much. But I think that I mean, obviously this is the food industry, but with any business, it's really hard for you to really, I don't think that you should expect to take any money out of the business in the first 2 years. Anything that you make, you should reinvest, and you're going to have really high capital in order to keep that going. So that's where a lot of different businesses, especially the food industry, will close. So going on to building their momentum and every guest, every bowl, every time. What was it that helped Noodles and Company turn the corner?
I'm trying to remember that.
Yeah, what was that thing?
They
I mean,
they came back from out of town, and then they found the place flooded. And then he was talking about how so discouraging it was that moment they decided, this is it, we've got to change. And then they all met, and then they went specifically into like the 6 items, and then they divided and they gave everybody their job, and then they went to work.
Yeah, that was pretty pivotal. That would definitely, like, as I was reading that, because I do not like doing like home renovation stuff. If my basement ever got flooded, I'd just go homeless. Like, it's over. We can't do it. So I definitely could relate to the deviation between what I would have done in that moment, shoveling water out of my basement, versus what they did. So it was just motivating, because so often you see groups deteriorate at the slightest push of like conflict or obstacle. They're just like, and they fall apart. And so it was really cool in this moment to just see how something that they could have just been all super negative and depressed about, they just turned into like that moment where it's like, okay, are we bailing or are we going to make this work? And then they made it work.
It's kind of like one of those come to Jesus, things where it's like, okay, what are we going to do? So,
yeah.
Okay, so talking about their growth strategy for the future, it asks questions like, how do they plan to expand? How do they plan on penetrating their niche? What challenges do they face? I think the biggest challenge they face is what Brenton said before, it was their competition. And growing too quickly and then deciding, okay, are we going to manage all of this? Because let's say you have, because I mean, in every corporation, you're going to have the layers. So even though like he can't do anything, he can't do everything. So then it's going to trickle down to the management. And so this team right here is going to be training the new stores that are going to be opening. So now if you put something too aggressive, then the quality is going to drop, or something is going to drop somewhere down the line. And I think that their biggest challenging is that. But then at the same point, franchising can be a huge headache. Even though there's so many benefits to it, at the same time, it could be like your doom.
Yeah. I honestly, I thought about his culture standards. I mean, the thing is, they're making noodles. That's not that complicated a business model. And that is, you can definitely expand that service. So to my mind, he just needed to delegate the culture building component to a team of people he trusted, and he needed to let that go and just say, hey, I know it's not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be able to go into every one of these restaurants and make sure the culture is the way I want it myself, but I've got 3 people I trust. They're going to go out and be regional support for these far-flung units. And I don't know, I think they really should expand aggressively and try and I don't know. Now, granted, we do know, I think, like Chipotle expanded a ton, and it's had to close a bunch of stores over the last 5 to 6 years. I think it's doing pretty good.
The one, I don't know if you guys have those stores over there, but did you guys see what happened with Fresh and Easy? I don't know if you guys are familiar with that store.
Yeah.
So
I'm familiar with it, but yeah.
Fresh and Easy is kind of like a little bit of Trader Joe's, a little bit of like a smaller mart, and they just bought across here in Vegas. They were opening in every corner, and they just went berserk and crazy, and they went bankrupt down, and they failed. And I think that that's the people were really looking for, and so it worked for a little bit until they thought, oh, this is great, now we just need to expand and take over, and it just completely killed them. So
Yeah.
I think that do that, it's a moving target. I think, I don't think that it's, especially since like the dining experience has changed so much in the past 10 years with everything that's new and everything that people are doing. If you expect that whatever they're doing is going to work and here let's expand and let's boom without really making sure that your niche is that strong, I think that it could go.
Well, it might just be a selfish desire on my part. I don't have a good noodle place near me personally. And I checked online, there wasn't a Noodles and Company maybe 30 minutes away. So I wish they'd expanded one vertically into my area.
I actually didn't check that. Let me check that.
Okay. So the next thing that they want us to talk about is like what we think that they should do, which is a little bit of what we already talked about, but they want us to discuss like the organizational structure needed to support growth. Like what do they need to do to support the growth? And then how the Noodles team concept can be an influence, and what other possibilities do we think that they should take for growth? So like maybe if we think they should go for franchising, or if they should just keep growing, or like what do we think?
Well, I think the biggest thing when they're trying to, when you're to their scale of growth and you want to boom nationwide, I think capital is the biggest hangup. How are we going to fund this? How are we going to fund this massive, universal takeover of America? So I think, once you get the funding in and okay, now it's a possibility, then you go into, okay, now what do we need to do for culture? What do we need to do? What's going to be the logistics of this now that we can fund it? And so I don't know, if it was me, I would first figure out, okay, do we have the capital to do this?
I think you're right. One of the things that I wrote on my thing was that they could possibly go bankrupt by growing too fast, because here he has a company that's already worth hundreds of million, however million, but to grow that, he's going to have to go into more debt. So it doesn't really mean anything that, if you run the risk of going bankrupt. I think that it's a huge risk, because here's what happened. When the market crash happened in 2008, most families stopped dining out and tons of places closed because families just couldn't afford to eat out anymore. And so here you are in the middle of this huge expansion, and you've invested all the money, and now a bunch of your stores, you don't have the capital to keep the good ones running, and you just go bankrupt altogether.
The one thing, I think the growth numbers that they were going for, the 32 new stores in 2013, I mean, they had planned that out, I believe, from some of the very early days of capital raising. And getting funding never seemed to be a problem for them. Even before they were getting heralded as one of the best new entrepreneurial efforts or whatever, they seem to be well connected folks that were getting a ton of private investments from private individuals. I think they were just a little shocked when they looked out the window one day and saw McDonald's was the parent company of Chipotle. I mean, just all their former competitors were suddenly getting massive influxes of cash, and their pretty conservative growth goals were suddenly being impeded by the fact that now they were going to go into rents that were twice as high as they expected and crowded markets. And so to me, I think their growth goals were fine. It was just the change in the landscape as they look out their window one day and realize two of their competitors have just had IPOs. McDonald's is funding Chipotle.
Yeah.
Just that boom in the market. So maybe, like you're saying, the way to play it would be to keep your growth conservative. I felt like they were doing, maybe scale back a bit, because all those other guys are going to take some hits when the bubble bursts.
I also thought of something like, because the worth of somebody's credit has a lot to do with theirs as well. Think of it in a company perspective. Even though they may not have the problem, their company shares might go down because they're so in debt.
Yeah.
If they're completely ratio of what they're worth is so high that company value is absolutely going to go down. So they have to be
Yeah,
careful
that'll
with
scare
that as
people
well.
away.
But does that count as debt if people buy shares of the company, like ownership shares? Isn't that owner's equity? They're not taking out
I
loans from
think-
the bank. The capital they have is all from people buying shares of their privately owned company, right?
But the people have to have faith that the shares actually have worth, that if something happens to the company, they're still going to be able to get their money. And I'm not disagreeing with you because I don't understand that much about it. I understand, I think, very little. I just think that it still plays a part, because even though people buy it, they still want to buy something. Look at what happened when Groupon went public.
Yeah.
It's worth nothing now, and so I think that there's got to be a balance.
Wow, how much money does Groupon get?
Didn't we do a Groupon case study?
Did we?
Not for this class, no.
I might have done one again in another class.
I did one in either this class or another one as well.
The marketing class, maybe.
Yeah.
Haven't
that's
done that
cool.
class yet.
If you search Groupon stock, the first result is Groupon stock class action lawsuit. So it doesn't look like.
That's good news, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Did they sell their stock on Groupon?
From my understanding, they just bought out their major competitor, Living Social, I think it's called. They just bought some. Maybe that's what the lawsuit's about. That they've formed too much of a monopoly or something. I don't know, but yeah, I do know. I heard it on NPR. They recently bought out Living Social.
Get in there.
Very interesting.
$4 a
Well,
share.
Groupon is definitely more popular than Living
Yeah, I'm
Social.
like I've only heard of Living Social, or let me see, at least seen some of their stuff maybe about 3 or 4 times, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's not as popular. Okay, so connections. It talks about are there any connections between this week's reading and this case? I don't think any of us have read the book. I certainly haven't read for this week. But then it goes into conclusion. So, let's see.
Ooh, do we get to find out what happened after this?
It doesn't say.
Well, obviously
actually.
they're expanding. And like I said in the chat window, I'm like, I got 9 within an hour of me.
They did the franchising. I know they have like 53 franchises per Wikipedia. So
Oh, okay. So maybe they did that.
out of 500 stores, they have 50 franchises.
Yeah. And that
Okay,
was
so
actually
since
something
it
that we
doesn't-
did in a different class.
Oh,
Was it the small
it
business
doesn't
development?
tell us anything else other than to summarize it or whatever. But in the very end, so we'll finish with this. It says, pick one recommendation that you would take if you were the main owner, and then defend your position with facts and reasonings for all that you've learned from outside materials.
Well, I call this the Care Bear plan. It's the Department of Care Bears that are going to go and make all of their new employees at their rapidly expanding business units far-flung across the East Coast of America care about their customers. It's a little more detailed than that, and it's super cost-effective, but that's my thing. It's
Okay.
basically it's a department of the company that is going to be delegated the responsibility of training in the culture that he views as so vital to their business.
Okay.
I think we're done, right? That's probably the best idea we can come up with.
Or is that for everybody?
I mean,
Yeah,
if you want to talk for everybody, that's fine.
No, I'm
I'll
cool.
sign on to Care Bear. Sign
All
on
right.
to Care Bear.
Yeah.
Done and done. I thought it was
Because obviously we know what happens, but my suggestion was just to, not necessarily expand aggressively, but just to kind of expand, I don't know, strategically, I think.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's trying to remember what it is, because you can still expand. You keep the culture. In a previous class, we talked about, it was a small business development. We went over like franchising and kind of what that entailed and how to do it. And like if you were to, it's like, oh, research a franchise that you can own here nearby. And it's like, okay, you kind of looked into that. And it's Yes, you have, because you're signing a contract, and you've got most of the time you're going to have to use the same exact distributors as the parent company does, and they're going to keep everything, the whole culture supposedly, or the same. You're going to keep in the menu. You're going to keep everything there, the same everything, but you still have a different owner. You have somebody who you just hope that they are going to embody what your vision is. And a lot of times they do kind of have it in the contract. Basically, they've got interviews, and they kind of pick and select who the franchise owner is going to be. But I said, I don't know, if you're so focused on keeping a culture from what I saw in the reading, then I said, don't do it. Keep the culture within the company, don't franchise, don't do any of that kind of stuff. Just expand, strategically, making sure that you can fund everything.
Yeah, I actually wrote something kind of like in the same lines. I was like, it really depends on what his ultimate goal is. If he really cares more about growth and brand exposure and brand recognition, then he should grow. But if he's more concerned about, the image and the culture, then he should probably not franchise and just do a more strategic growth, kind of like what you said, just a little bit slower, but make sure that it's done with the quality that they can control and all that.
Cool ideas.
Any last comments?
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'll push this button.
I'm pretty much good to go. I thought, yeah. Maybe you want some noodles? Still haven't had any. Kind of. That's frustrating.
There are none in Las Vegas, so I guess I won't be having any.
Really?
I know, you'd figure, but Vegas has so much good food. There's so many hole in the walls. Like you can go anywhere and everything is good here. So
You don't just eat buffet all day long?
we don't, but I actually ate at one today.
Nice.
It was an Indian one though.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That good.
My favorite thing about those Vegas buffets is the self-serve ice cream. I see how big I can get my cone, and then the unlimited sprinkles. I'm like, I'll have a little ice cream with my sprinkles, please. Yeah, I've eaten at a lot of those, and I loved them when I was a kid, and I love them now.
Yeah.
Everybody does. My friend comes over. She's like, when are we going to the buffet? I'm like, okay, like a bunch of fatties. Let's go.
Whenever I hear talk about buffets, I always remember John Panette, the comedian. If you guys remember him.
Googling right now.
Yeah, Google it. He's hilarious. But he's the guy who, he's a big fat white dude, Italian, and he does the whole he goes to the Chinese buffet place, and he's like, "You've been here for an hour."
Yeah, I think I have heard this guy's stuff before.
Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, they have to actually close down the buffet for an hour, and all the Vegas buffets do that, because otherwise people will try to sneak and stay in there from lunch to dinner.
Yeah.
They literally close down, wipe everything.
Everybody out.
Yeah,
That sounds like a fun heist movie right there.
See how long you can stay at a buffet.
Yeah. I've only been to one buffet in Las Vegas, but it was good.
Good.
No?
Well, if you guys ever come here, you can feel free to email me for all the tips. I'll tell you where all the good places are.
Oh yeah, hot food tips. And if you're ever coming to Chandler, Arizona, let me know. I can tell you where all the Jack in the Boxes and McDonald's are. We have an In-N-Out, and I'll let you know right where it is.
So next week, I don't think we meet. I was looking at the lesson, and there's nothing in there for us.
Nope.
Woohoo! Sweet. It's fun and all, but
yeah,
maybe next week we'll take a break.
Cool.
No case study at all, or I'll find out.
And then I think I'm doing the last one as far as setting this thing up. So I'll plan to rock that out here in a couple weeks.
Yay.
All right, peace, y'all.
Sweet.
Okay. Bye,
Later.
guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.